Would you pray with me, please? May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts, O God, be acceptable to you this day and always, for you are our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. So have you ever been on an airplane flight and the flight attendant comes to you and said, we've had to make some changes. We're going to upgrade you to first class. I know this happens to people. It does happen, yes. It has never happened to me. I keep waiting. There was once that Mike and I were on a trip and he surprised me and bought an upgrade to first class, which was an amazing treat, right? But to have it be one of those things where it's unexpected and all of a sudden you get to live out your flight in completely different space, right? This story today is one of those stories. You're sitting somewhere. We'll do the second half first. You're sitting in the back of the plane, and someone comes and says, come up here, this is where you belong, and then displaces the person who was in that seat and sends them to the back. That happens, I think, sometimes in real life when we find ourselves in the wrong line, in the wrong section of a room. I was at a meeting once in Ogden, Utah, at the university there. And I wasn't so much displaced by people who had come into the room by where I was sitting, but the people in the room did not want to honor who I was as a religious leader and a woman in that community, so they turned their chairs away from me like this. That kind of displacement doesn't feel good, does it? Oh, yes. Nancy's looking at me. Yeah. Actual truth. That kind of displacement doesn't feel good. It makes us uncomfortable. And so Jesus is inviting us to truly live in a different way. He's inviting us to live with a heart of humbleness through and through. And my guess would be with everything that we do, not just where we're seated in a banquet hall. Certainly most of us don't have those kinds of arrangements in our life on a weekly basis, right? But maybe when it comes to where we sit in fellowship hall or where we even sit here, do we have a notion in our head that we deserve a certain spot? Do we have an understanding that we are entitled to something special? And I keep hearing, I put new batteries in. We'll see. Okay, very strange. Let me move over to here. Okay, can everybody hear now? Don't ask me what's going on. The gremlins are here. At any rate, that displacement, that we think we're entitled to a certain way, right? How many of you have ever wanted to get a ticket for something and you have to dial a number on the telephone right at 10 o'clock because that's when the tickets go on sale, to find out that you're put in a queue, you're put in a line, and you're number 447 in order to just be able to push a button on your computer to actually get the tickets that you want. These kinds of things make us a little crazy, and yet this is more and more how our world works. And what happens is we get into this, but I want what I want, right? I want my first place. I have to have my opportunity to get those tickets. I must be able to do X, Y, or Z. whatever it is that we find we need to do. I can see Jesus shaking his finger, right? It's like, no, you guys aren't getting this. You're not getting this at all. This goes to, which we've talked about many times, the first shall be last, the last shall be first. This is another lesson like that, reordered a little bit, that the notion that we have or deserve entitlement just doesn't fit in with a spiritual life with Jesus. And we have a problem with that in our culture. And it comes a lot from scarcity. It comes from we think there is not enough. Except for that if we truly understand God's love and abundance in the world, there is no such thing as not enough if we are willing to share our space on the planet, right? If we all give up our special seat, our special way of being, or expectation in a special way, there's plenty. This scarcity mindset that advertisers throw in front of us, and it's going to start. It's the middle of September. Here we go. Get ready for the Christmas advertisements. I remember when my children were young is when Cabbage Patch Kids came out. When Cabbage Patch Kids came out, the marketing, from a marketer's point of view, was the first time we really saw this brilliance. Decided they would only make a certain amount. And they immediately, those poor little sad dolls, flew off the shelves and were terribly expensive. And if you didn't get one, which we have seen repeated by marketers ever since, if you didn't get that particular thing for your child's life would be ruined forever, right? We've gotten this training from our culture that says if you miss out on this, your life just will not be fulfilled. And Jesus comes and says, you know what? Sit in the back row, it's okay. Where are your blessings? Where is the center of your life? That's what we need to be paying attention to. This notion of there are only 10 left doesn't exist with God's kingdom. Money, time, resources, recognition, sometimes we want that pat on the back too. We don't get enough of it, so we want to push our way to the front of the line or make sure we get to meet the very, very important person that's been speaking at an event or whatever it might be. We want to be the one shining, and Jesus is going, not so much. Just have the heart of God at the center of your life, and all will be well. So that whole notion of pride, or the whole notion of needing, and this is still in the news in front of us, these people who have paid sometimes extraordinary amounts of money to get their kids into college, to get them into the higher elite schools to do some sport that they didn't really ever do, to fudge the system. And Jesus is shaking his head going, no, that's so wrong and so antithetical to the way that even this text invites us to be. The invitation is to be humble and to live in community. So humility and community go together, right? We don't do this life in Christ alone, but we do it in community. We spent a lot of time this summer and early this fall talking about this, what it means to be part of a body, part of a church that shares the gifts that it has. This deal is not transactional, okay? We don't sit in the least important place in the sanctuary or at the table. We don't do the, if there is such a thing, least important job and then expect something from it. The same as we wouldn't sit in the front and then expect something better from it. Jesus doesn't invite us into that kind of transactional world, and yet that's the world we live in. You do this, you'll get that. You do this, you'll get that. Jesus says, no, that's not the way that God works. There's an interesting, and I've actually posted it on our Facebook page, and you might want to, as you go into Fellowship Hall following the service, get with somebody who has Facebook on their phone and watch this. It's an Oscar-winning animated short film. It's 3 minutes long. It's called Ticket Without a Seat. It is one of the most inspiring short animated films I have ever seen. And it tells this story very clearly that Jesus is telling. It's about an older man getting on a train. And he has a ticket that doesn't have a seat, which means for however long his journey is, he's going to have to stand. And people watch him get on, and everybody just kind of ignores him. And a woman finally comes up to him, she has a seat, and says, "You take my seat, I'll be fine." And he says, "My ticket doesn't have a seat." And she says, "Mine doesn't either." And so they switch places, and she stands right near him and hangs on to the bar, right? And he asks her, "How long is your ride?" And she says, "Oh, it's only 5 hours. It's not bad." And he kind of looks at her and says, "Oh, please let me know if you get tired." She goes, "No, it's not long. I'll be fine." And then the conductor comes and wants to see everybody's ticket, right? So the man without a seat is sitting in a seat and gives the ticket. And the conductor kind of looks at him and just leaves him be. And then gets the ticket from the woman, and her ticket is the seat that the man is sitting in, right? And they make this eye contact, and she says, "It's okay. He has my seat." And this part blows me away. You really need to watch this. It's much better than my telling. And the conductor then says to her, "Come with me. I have a place in the next car. There's an empty seat, and you can sit there." And she reaches behind her and grabs a pair of crutches and then walks her way down that train. And please watch it. If nobody in there has Facebook, let me know. I'll give you guys my phone and you can watch it. It strikes me at the heart of who we are as people who follow Jesus. That we will give without anything in return, and then yet have the riches and glory of being God's people. The riches and glory of being connected in a way that in nothing else there is this heart. This text is instructions for humility and community. It's about compassion and grace. It's about not getting repaid. The second part of the text invites us to not invite all our fancy friends to our home to dinner, but invite others. Because our fancy friends, or just our ordinary friends, even though they're wonderful and amazing, will always pay us back. And Jesus is inviting us into a place of compassion where what we do doesn't expect a return. And that's what we do in the church. We don't expect a return except for our relationship with God to deepen. That's it. We don't expect anything fancy. Just a deepening of that relationship. I was in Tucson this past week at the Academy of Spiritual Formation. I don't know if any of you have ever done that. It's a program that comes out of the upper room, and it's been around 25, 30 years, I suppose. It's a 5-day academy, and it's a teaching academy. You have 2 teachers. We had one seminary professor from Claremont and a rabbi, a woman from Tucson. And they taught all week, morning and afternoon, on compassion and courage. And so I sat immersed in that learning and that graceful place all week. And then I got to experience an offering of just sheer surprise. I got on the plane, and the person sitting behind a gentleman took my suitcase and put it up, which was heavy. This place had a bookstore, that was bad. My suitcase was heavy, and he just generously, just out of his heart, took my suitcase and put it up there. It was just lovely. And so as we landed, and of course everybody stands and wants to get off the plane, it's Friday night in Las Vegas, right? And everybody wants to get out, and I heard all the chatter about getting to casinos and whatever. And the man sitting next to the man that put up my suitcase took down my suitcase. And now I don't often experience these things because I'm pretty able-bodied and usually manage my luggage fine, which I could have done. Except for there just was this offering that came with a new awareness of how we are, if we are aware, allowed and invited to interact with people. It made a difference for us in that little exchange of luggage that said, I see you. And I'm grateful for whatever it is this day has brought. There are different messages when we participate in community, when we show up and see the people around us, like this woman on this video saw this man, like Jesus sees the people in this text. Don't have that big ego and pride-filled spirit that says, I need to be at the front of the line or have the best of anything. But live with humility. Live with grace. That is truly, I believe, our greatest calling, to live that way. And so may it be so for you in these days. Open your heart to see where Jesus might be inviting you. To stay at the back and invite someone else to a different place in their life. And may you be blessed as you do so.